In the heart of the sleepy town of Harrowmore stood the Ravenwood Inn, a once grand hotel that exuded an air of faded elegance. It had been the talk of the town for generations, not for its charm or history, but for the chilling tales of its supernatural occurrences. Legend had it that in room 13, a chamber tucked away on the top floor, guests had reported hearing eerie whispers in the middle of the night. Visitors would often complain of a bone-chilling cold that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the room, and some even claimed to have seen shadowy figures flit across the corners of their vision. The first incident was recounted by a man named Thomas, a weary traveler who checked into room 13 one stormy night. He had barely settled in before he heard faint whispers that seemed to echo from the walls. The whispers grew louder and more insistent, and despite his efforts to drown them out, they persisted until dawn. The next morning, Thomas fled the inn, his eyes haunted by a fear he couldn't explain. In the years that followed, the tales multiplied. One story spoke of a honeymooning couple who woke up to find their bed violently shaking in the middle of the night. Another told of a businessman who saw a fleeting figure with hollow eyes staring at him from the foot of his bed. Each visitor left the Ravenwood Inn with a newfound fear of the unknown. Then, on a particularly frosty evening, a paranormal investigator named Emily arrived at the Ravenwood Inn, drawn by the stories that had echoed through the years. Armed with recording devices and a sense of trepidation, she checked into room 13, determined to uncover the truth behind the whispers and shadows. As night fell, Emily set up her equipment and settled into bed, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The room seemed unnaturally still, as if the air held its breath. Just as the clock struck midnight, the whispers began, barely audible at first, but growing steadily louder. Emily's recorder captured the faint words, which seemed to be in a language she couldn't quite recognize. As the whispers intensified, Emily noticed a chilling sensation creeping up her spine. Shadows danced along the walls, their forms shifting and contorting in unsettling ways. She gripped her camera tightly, determined to document the inexplicable events unfolding before her eyes. Suddenly, the temperature dropped dramatically, and Emily's breath misted in the air. A figure materialized at the foot of her bed, its eyes dark pits of emptiness. The room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, suffocating and heavy. Summoning all her courage, Emily addressed the figure, her voice shaking but resolute. "Who are you? What do you want?" she asked, her words echoing in the silence. The figure's mouth twisted into a grotesque semblance of a smile, and its hollow eyes seemed to pierce through Emily's soul. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices, overlapping and intertwining until they formed a symphony of anguish and despair. Terrified but determined, Emily continued to question the entity, desperately seeking answers. The figure's form wavered, as if struggling to maintain its presence. Then, with a final bone-chilling whisper, it dissipated into the shadows, leaving Emily alone in the room. The experience left Emily shaken, her beliefs forever altered by the encounter. She left the Ravenwood Inn with a newfound respect for the stories that had haunted its halls for generations. The secrets of room 13 remained buried, but Emily's chilling encounter would forever be etched in her memory, a testament to the eerie whispers and shadowy figures that lurked in the heart of the Ravenwood Inn. Perched atop a lonely hill stood the Crescenta Hotel, a majestic structure that boasted stunning views of the surrounding countryside. However, its beauty was marred by a haunting tale that had spread far and wide, captivating the minds of those who dared to venture near. The story began decades ago, when a talented pianist named Isabella took up residence in room 237. Isabella was known throughout the region for her entrancing melodies, which seemed to capture the very essence of human emotion. But her gift came at a price. She was plagued by a consuming darkness that seemed to seep into her music. As the years passed, Isabella's compositions grew increasingly haunting, evoking a sense of sorrow and despair that unsettled all who heard them. Guests at the Crescenta Hotel would often wake in the dead of night to the sound of her piano echoing through the halls, its mournful notes sending shivers down their spines. One particular night, a music journalist named Alex arrived at the Crescenta Hotel, drawn by the enigmatic tales of Isabella's melodies. Eager to unravel the mystery, Alex checked into room 237, the very room where Isabella had lived and composed her haunting music. As midnight approached, Alex set up recording equipment, hoping to capture the elusive melodies that had entranced so many before. The room was suffused with an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft whisper of the wind outside. As the clock struck 12, a faint melody drifted through the air, its notes delicate yet laden with an unspoken sadness. Alex's heart raced as the melody continued, each note seeming to weave a tapestry of emotions that transcended the boundaries of time. The room seemed to come alive with an ethereal energy, and a chill settled in the air. Transfixed, Alex followed the sound to its source, a grand piano that stood in a corner of the room. Without conscious thought, Alex reached out and touched the keys, and the melody flowed from their touch, filling the room with an otherworldly resonance. The music seemed to carry a message, a plea from the depths of Isabella's soul. As the final notes echoed through the room, a figure materialized before Alex's eyes. Isabella herself, her form translucent but unmistakably present. She looked at Alex with eyes brimming with sorrow, and her lips formed a wordless plea. Overwhelmed by the encounter, Alex gathered the courage to speak. "Isabella, what do you want? Why are you here?" Isabella's voice was a gentle whisper carried by the wind. "I seek redemption, a release from the darkness that consumed me. My music holds the key, but it must be played with an open heart." Touched by Isabella's longing, Alex agreed to help. The journalist spent days practicing Isabella's compositions, pouring their own emotions into the melodies. The haunting notes seemed to resonate with the very essence of their being, as if Isabella's spirit guided their fingers. On the night of the full moon, Alex sat at the piano, the notes flowing effortlessly from their fingers. The melodies wove a tale of sorrow, of pain, and of the hope for redemption. As the final chord reverberated through the room, Isabella's figure began to fade, a serene smile gracing her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice mingling with the fading echoes of the music. And then she was gone, leaving behind a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The melodies of the Crescenta Hotel continued to echo through its halls, but they were different now, infused with a sense of healing and closure. The story of Isabella's haunting melodies lived on, a reminder that even in death, the power of music could transcend the bounds of time and touch the souls of those who dared to listen. Nestled within the heart of a sprawling forest stood the Astoria Manor, an elegant estate that had long been the talk of the town for its exquisite architecture and lavish parties. However, its opulent facade concealed a chilling secret, one that revolved around a cursed portrait that had hung in the grand ballroom for generations. The portrait depicted a beautiful young woman named Lavinia, who had been a guest at the manor during its earliest years. Lavinia had been renowned for her beauty and charm, and she had captured the hearts of many with her radiant smile and enchanting presence. But beneath her surface allure lay a dark obsession that would ultimately seal her fate. The legend began with Lavinia's unrequited love for the master of the manor, Lord Nathaniel. Consumed by jealousy and rage over Lord Nathaniel's affection for another, Lavinia turned to dark magic in a desperate bid to win his heart. Her rituals grew increasingly sinister, and her once beautiful face contorted into a mask of malevolence. One fateful night, as a grand masquerade ball was in full swing, Lavinia unveiled her final spell. But the magic spiraled out of control, engulfing her in a vortex of darkness that left her trapped between the realms of the living and the dead. In a final act of vengeance, Lavinia's curse extended to a portrait painted in her likeness, condemning her to a spectral existence tied to the image that had once captured her beauty. The years passed, and the Astoria Manor fell into disrepair. The once thriving estate became a place shrouded in whispers of hauntings and tragedy. Visitors reported eerie sensations in the ballroom, as if the air itself were charged with a malevolent energy. Some even claimed to have seen Lavinia's portrait come to life, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. One day, a historian named Amelia arrived at the Astoria Manor, driven by a fascination with its history and the tales of the cursed portrait. Unperturbed by the stories that had frightened others away, she requested to stay in the manor for a week to document its history and unravel the truth behind the haunting. Amelia's research led her to the manor's decrepit library, where she pored over old journals and faded documents. She pieced together the story of Lavinia's obsession and the tragic events that had followed. The more Amelia learned, the more she felt a strange connection to the young woman who had been consumed by darkness. As the days passed, Amelia explored the manor, its grandeur faded but still holding an air of faded splendor. The grand ballroom stood as a testament to a bygone era, its walls adorned with portraits of past inhabitants. And there, amidst the faded portraits, hung the cursed image of Lavinia. One evening, as twilight bathed the manor in a soft glow, Amelia stood before the portrait, her heart heavy with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow her, their intensity almost tangible. As darkness settled over the manor, Amelia felt an electric energy in the air, a sense of anticipation that hung like a shroud. Summoning her courage, Amelia addressed the portrait, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Lavinia, if you can hear me, I want to understand your story. I want to help you find peace." For a moment, the air seemed to still, as if the very atmosphere held its breath. Then, the portrait began to change. Lavinia's expression softened, her eyes losing their malevolent gleam. A voice, faint but clear, seemed to echo in the air, telling Amelia of her desperation, her obsession, and her regret. Touched by Lavinia's tale, Amelia vowed to break the curse that had bound her to the portrait for centuries. Drawing upon her research and a deep well of empathy, Amelia delved into the mysteries of dark magic, determined to undo the curse that had twisted Lavinia's fate. Days turned into nights as Amelia worked tirelessly, weaving spells and incantations in an attempt to free Lavinia's spirit. The portrait seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and Amelia could feel the weight of centuries of anguish and longing. Finally, on the night of the full moon, as Amelia stood before the portrait, a soft light enveloped the image of Lavinia. The light expanded, filling the room with a radiant glow, and Lavinia's form materialized before Amelia's eyes. "Thank you," Lavinia whispered, her voice a gentle breeze that caressed Amelia's cheeks. "You have given me a chance to find peace, to finally let go of the darkness that consumed me." Amelia nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. As Lavinia's form faded, a sense of tranquility settled over the room, as if the manor itself had exhaled a sigh of release. The curse broken, the Astoria Manor underwent a transformation. Its halls once again echoed with laughter and music, and the grand ballroom, once a place of darkness, became a beacon of celebration. The tale of Lavinia's curse persisted as a cautionary reminder of the dangers of unchecked obsession, but now it also carried a message of redemption and the power of empathy to break even the most malevolent of curses. In the heart of the mist-shrouded moors stood the Elysium Lodge, an imposing structure that exuded an air of mystery and intrigue. Its history was veiled in shadows, but the most chilling tale revolved around the spectral guests who were said to frequent its halls, forever trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead. The story began with a grand masquerade ball that was to be hosted at the Elysium Lodge. The ballroom was adorned with opulent decorations, and guests arrived in elaborate costumes, their faces concealed by masks of exquisite design. As the night unfolded, laughter and music filled the air, and the lodge seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. As midnight approached, a hush fell over the ballroom, and a figure dressed in a striking black ensemble entered, their mask a delicate web of silver. The figure danced with an elegance that captivated all who watched, their movements so fluid and graceful that they seemed almost ethereal. Whispers of awe spread through the crowd as the mysterious guest took the floor. As the clock struck midnight, the figure's dance reached a crescendo, and a gasp of surprise rippled through the room. The figure's mask had fallen away, revealing an empty void where a face should have been. The music came to an abrupt halt, and the room was plunged into a stunned silence. The phantom guest's gaze swept over the crowd, their hollow eyes seeming to pierce through the very souls of the living. With a final, haunting glance, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind a room filled with bewildered and frightened guests. In the days that followed, rumors of the phantom guest spread like wildfire, and the Elysium Lodge became a place of both fascination and fear. Visitors claimed to have encountered the figure in various parts of the lodge, always on the stroke of midnight, as if the spirit sought to relive the events of that fateful night. Curiosity drew a paranormal investigator named Jacob to the Elysium Lodge. Armed with an array of equipment, he set up camp in one of the guest rooms, eager to capture evidence of the phantom guest and uncover the truth behind the haunting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the moors, Jacob's heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Midnight arrived, and he waited in the darkness, his equipment poised and ready. The air grew still, and a sense of anticipation settled over the lodge. At the stroke of midnight, a chill swept through the room, and a soft whisper seemed to echo on the wind. Jacob's heart quickened as he stared at the doorway, his camera focused on capturing any sign of the spectral figure. Suddenly, a shimmering form materialized before him, the phantom guest, their black ensemble billowing as if caught in an invisible breeze. Jacob's breath caught in his throat as he aimed his camera, snapping pictures in rapid succession. The figure turned toward him, its hollow eyes locking onto Jacob's. In the silence of the room, Jacob spoke, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "Who are you? What happened that night?" The figure's gaze held a mixture of sadness and longing, and the whisper on the wind grew stronger, as if carrying the weight of a long-held secret. "I was a guest once, seeking to mask my true nature. But vanity and deceit have consequences, and I paid the price for my actions." As the figure spoke, Jacob's camera captured images that seemed to blur the line between the living and the dead. The lodge itself seemed to resonate with the spirit's tale, its walls holding memories that echoed through time. With a final, mournful glance, the phantom guest began to fade, its form dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The air seemed to hold a lingering sense of melancholy, as if the spirit's story had been etched into the very fabric of the lodge. As dawn broke, Jacob reviewed the images he had captured, each one a testament to the spectral encounter he had witnessed. The phantom guest's story was one of vanity and regret, a cautionary tale that lingered in the halls of the Elysium Lodge. Jacob left the lodge with a newfound understanding of the thin boundary that separated the worlds of the living and the dead. The tale of the phantom guests persisted, a haunting reminder of the consequences of deceit and the enduring power of a restless spirit's presence.